Welcome to WhoDooTV, everyone out there. We just got done with Image Expo 2018, and we got to be at the private press conference for Rick Remender announcing Death or Glory, and boy does this book look amazing. We got some more press conferences like this to come. Make sure you're connected and subscribing to WhoDooTV. Leave some comments below, and hey, enjoy this video.
You are now watching WhoDooTV.
Death or Glory is a story about a young woman who was raised in in a convoy on the American highway and off the grid. No social security number, no bank account. She's a sort of she represents, as I was saying earlier, my desire to be free of all of the constructs of modern society and all of the responsibilities that I've ended up with as a grown man. She's in a situation where, after living with this convoy and being sort of a group of people who are completely untethered to modern society and the trappings, her father falls ill, and she is forced to make some difficult decisions in terms of how she is going to acquire the finances to pay for his operation. And she discovers that her ex-husband has been using the family convoy for illicit purpose, and she makes a plan to go infiltrate one of the various dealings that he's up to and steal the money. This is a girl who's never held a gun. She's a grease monkey, a mechanic, a race car driver. She's a normal human being who is now confronted with this difficult reality where her father's life depends on her picking up a gun and going out and stealing from some bad people, and that of course leads to nothing good. Things go bad, but I'm sure by the end it'll be very happy.
Is this a story that will have any sort of continuation, or will we see the beginning, the development of this character, and the resulting consequences of her decisions fully realized by the end?
Yeah, you'll see. It's dominoes. What ends up happening is the perfect storm, and I like the idea of putting somebody in the midst of this turmoil who isn't. A lot of the time I'll write characters who have some kind of a background that makes them at least capable of dealing with the various situations they end up in. And other than the fact that she is a great driver and mechanic, she's not she's never held a gun. She ends up doing these things and putting herself into pretty extraordinary circumstances, and nothing goes right. And the book is ongoing, and that means that it could right now the outline I think is 12 or 13 issues. It could go 20. Like Seven to Eternity was going to be 10, and now it's probably going to be 18 or 20. You just never know until you get into it. But we've got 5 issues in the can. We wanted to get a whole lot done before we wanted to hit the ground running when we launched and be able to ship the book on a real timely schedule, as well as a 40-page first issue. So we've really dumped our asses into that one. And I know where the story lands, but there's a whole lot in the middle there that it'll go at least, I think, 12 issues. But knowing me, it'll probably end up going longer than that.
What was the inspiration behind this one?
I always try to write from something that's like personally, a ghost, something that's in the background, kind of bugging me. Tokyo Ghost was the cell addiction. Low was my time, in therapy and dealing with various issues, and Black Science is my fear of being a workaholic father. I think that Deadly Class is, a ton of stories and things that I actually went through hidden in the guise of the School for Assassins. Fiction is great, but, I think the best kinds of fiction come from a place of there's got to be some kind of a fire. If you're just coming up with a high concept where you're like, that's a movie, yeah, people can tell, It's like, oh, well, that's plot progression and a character did a thing and there was a fight. And I think that we're to the point now where there are so many options in terms of film, television, comic books, media. We're so inundated with options for entertainment that we all want something that's personal, that strikes a chord, that reflects our own journey that reflects our own thoughts on daily existence. And I think that, I was reading an article about how many hours the average American is working and how that's changed, in 2 generations. And we're just fucked out stress machines, just filtering buckets of coffee down our faces, constantly checking our phones, doing this, everybody's just fucked out, in every single job. There is no more like, hey, it's 40 hours. I go in at 8, I bail off at 4 or 5, don't hear about it. I always hear about it. It's like the news. I had to turn that off. I'm like, used to be I get home and I'd be like, oh, it's 7 o'clock. I'll watch the news for 30 minutes. Oh, the world is a shithole, and I turn it off. And now it's just like news, 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 news. I'm like, fuck! So in terms of Death or Glory, it was a response to my own desire to disconnect. I desperately, I have this human need to sell everything. I talk about, we all have loops, shit we realize we're talking about, and you're like, but I've said this to you 100 times. We all have that loop. My loop has been for years. I want to sell this. I want to sell all this shit. I want to get rid of all these things. I want to get an RV. I want to get the fuck out of here. My wife, to her credit, understands that raising the kids in an RV might not be super beneficial to them, but it might be great. So Glory is born in that world, in that loop that I'm in. And she's the idyllic version. She's raised in a convoy. She's got no social security number and all the constructs that I've gone over. And so I gave her the idyllic life in the freedom, kind of mixed into that mythology of the American highway and the last free roads. And it's out there. We could go. We could leave this shit behind and go on an adventure for years if we wanted. Hey, we won't. All right, back to the computer. But so Glory is born of that desire, and then putting that at risk, so that she now is in a situation where she's got to fight to try to keep it together and hold it together with a world that doesn't dig people who don't have those things. So when her father's sick, there is no help. He's got no social security number. There's no bank that will loan them money. There's nobody who will do anything for them. They're like, you don't exist. You didn't play the game. You're not part of it. So it's also a sort of identifying and analyzing the potential downside and the consequences of saying, I don't want any part of that thing, and then shit, I need the doctor. So I guess it's kind of born of my wife and I debating my stupid idea of joining a convoy.
Well, it sounds like a lot of your work is very cathartic and allows you to be able to express things that you're experiencing as a dad. I'm wondering, are these maybe different ways to talk to your kids without having them roll their eyes at you? Are you playing the long game with some of the things that you've learned living and just being alive?
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. What do we really leave behind for them? And then I thought that once upon a time, and then I realized my kids are never going to sit down and read all this shit. My kids are never going to go, oh, look at all these fucking piles of books that crazy guy made before he died of a heart attack at 47. Wow! Because I thought to myself, if my dad had been a writer and done that, if my dad had piles of books that he had created, would I read them? I would love to think that I would. So, but I think that more than anything, it's just trying to, and they're not all parables, they're not all ethical statements. A lot of the times the good guys lose, which, is much like life. But there is a lot of my philosophy and counter philosophy hidden in various characters, and worldview is definitely, the dirtiness of the gray area between good and evil. And I would like to think that one day my kids might read some of these things and pick up some of my ideological leanings. I also try not to be heavy-handed enough where what any one character is when they're carrying a belief that I actually hold. A lot of the time I'll even hide that in a villain's thing, so you're confused, and suddenly, I try to scatter it. So it would be nice to think that they'll read some of it, but who knows.
What are the characters can you look forward to meeting on
So this is a pretty grounded story in terms of things that I've done. It's the most grounded story. It's in our world. It's not even, there aren't even high schools for assassins. These are straight up human beings. She lives in Yuma, Arizona. She is a truck driver and a grease monkey, and I've tried to ground it in that. And then I went into a lot of various articles. Crime is truth is always stranger than fiction. When you really dig into modern crime stories, and I did this with a book I did called The Last Days of American Crime, when you start researching true crime and what's going on, the black markets and the various things that are going on in the dark web and stuff, it's worse than anything going on in any supervillain comic book. Like Dr. Doom looks like a sweet fellow. Like, oh, he just wanted to take over some stuff. What the people are doing on the dark web is selling human organs. So I dug into a lot of that and created a number of bands of criminal organizations, hornet's nests that she upsets, and as those dominoes fall, they all end up sort of chasing after her. So in the case of Death or Glory, I've actually got more villains and I've got more antagonists than I have protagonists in this. So that the deck is stacked pretty high against her, and there's a lot of very colorful and interesting bad guys. One of whom is we'll see in the first issue is Jack, and Jack is a fellow who uses liquid nitrogen to kill people, which is you could have a canister of liquid nitrogen, a hose, and a thing, and spray it on me, and I would half freeze, and then my body would fall, and that's not even crazy science fiction. So I just try to come up with things that make the villains, working from No Country for Old Men. It's so simple. It's so goddamn creepy. They just piffs you. And it's just trying to cook up things like that still seem grounded in the real world, are still horrifying, and then tie that into the villains. And it's been a lot of fun building up the various villains that she's surrounded by. That's been one of the most fun parts of the book.
Hey, if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button below.
There's also that subscribe button down there too. Make sure you punch that. We'd appreciate it. Follow us at Twitter at WhoDooTV, also on Facebook.
Yeah, and we'd like to thank our friends over at OutrightGeekery.com. Be sure to check them out. They got all sorts of nerdy stuff on there.
Links down in the description. Thank you for watching WhoDooTV. We appreciate you guys.